Yeah, I
Like
don't mess around.
it's like it remind when I read your bio, I was thinking about the Wolf from Pulp Fiction, where they called in Harvey Keitel and he just took care of everything. You know,
I
like
am. I'm
I
sort
got
of a clarity fixer.
there you
That's what
go.
I do.
There you go. And it's very necessary. So it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation with living through the last 3.5 years. Speaking of being a fixer, going through a pandemic, how did you get through that time period and how did it change you?
Oh boy, that is such a wonderful question. How did I get through that time period? I got through that time period through a variety of conscious and unconscious choices. Some of them, I really was focused, especially at the very beginning, on taking good care of myself. I was in a different role than I am now. I had a position in a global executive network, and I had two roles in that company. I was the head of thought leadership for a global council of thought leaders, and then I also had a business development role. And really, from the very beginning in March, I was immediately on Zoom calls all day long with and half of those were sales calls. So I had to figure out a way. I couldn't just I couldn't just cower in the corner and say boo hoo. I
Yeah.
had to show up, not just show up, but I mean show up
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
every single time. And so I made it a practice of what do I need to do to take care of myself, mind, body, and spirit from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, and really examine those choices. I lost weight during COVID. I got stronger during COVID. I strengthened my meditation practice during COVID. I started getting into some, deeper mental health issues and really emerged on the other side on one level, being very being very strong because
Yeah.
I had to be.
Yeah.
I will say how it changed me. That is such a great question. Um, hmm, I feel like it has changed everybody,
Hmm.
and I feel like it didn't matter how rich you were, it didn't matter where you lived, it didn't matter who you voted for, it didn't matter your situation, if you were living at home or you had 1,700 people in your house. We all went through a trauma. A
Yeah.
collective trauma. And so, how it changed me was knowing that that happened and not just ignoring it because it was so painful for everyone, and really then opening up myself to more compassion and more understanding of the human condition, really. So in this climate where it feels so divided, and feels so acrimonious with each other, I really found that seeing that as a collective unifying experience that we all went through, even though it was really, really awful, I had an opportunity to look now through clearer eyes to see that we all are really the same. And we all have, the same challenges that we've gone through. So I think it helped me to open my heart a little bit more.
Yeah. I think as the microscope pulls back from everything that we went through, I'm starting to feel like we're all in a novel, like that there was a show on HBO called Left Behind where the rapture happened
Mm.
and everybody was left behind. And there's this level of like, all of us went through something major. Because you used to hear about SARS and the 17, 18, 16 variants of COVID that would hit certain places around the world. And we would all think, wow, that's crazy, a global pandemic. But in America, it was always a movie. We would dramatize it.
Yeah.
But this was everybody. This was everything. And this
Yep.
wasn't like two or three things like, oh, well, the grocery store is affected, or this sporting event's not happening, or this school's closed. It was like every single thing we had was a snow globe turned upside down and
Yep.
shaken really
Yep.
hard. So
Exactly.
it,
Yep.
it,
And
it
and
all,
that's why grounding and meditation and presence and gratitude and all the things that I had been speaking about for years, as a professional speaker and as an author, I had a chance to put it all into practice,
yeah,
big time. Because
yeah,
when you are in a snow globe moment in your life, it's up to you, not anybody else. It's up to
right.
you to figure out where your center is and to figure out where your ground is so you can stay in the storm, and be reasonably healthy as a result of it, in your relationships and in yourself.
So you're in the business of helping people, and I want to get to the essence of what you do. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I draw smart pictures for people.
Okay. How do you explain to someone that's a quarter or a half century old?
I draw smart pictures for people.
Okay. I like it. So what did you want to be in the third grade?
What I wanted to be in the third grade was a comedian, an
Okay.
actress, a performer. I loved being on stage. The stage is my natural habitat. I really, really loved it. I was the one that watched Carol Burnett. Carol Burnett was like my hero.
Yeah.
Lucille Ball. I just loved comedy and I loved presentations and yet I also was a super nerd, and I also loved helping people. I answered a question the other day at a mastermind event that I went to, and they said a similar question. What was your perfect job when you were a kid? And I actually created a little uh, uh, cardboard. Uh, the doctor is in. Do you
Yeah.
remember Lucy from the
Oh, yeah.
Peanuts? And
Of
she was
course.
psychiatric help for 5 cents. The
5 cents.
doctor is in. I created one of those myself. So obviously early on, I had that heart inside that said, I want to help people get through the dark times and give them light, give them clarity. So I was a clarity worker way back when I was a child.
So you're in Southern California. You had mentioned Minnesota. Take me kind of on this evolved journey of yours to this point where you're doing all these, you've diversified into all these different flavors to help people.
Yeah, well, the journey for each one of us is so rich and unique. I have popped all over the world, and born in Minnesota and moved lots of different places. Ended up back in Minnesota, and through a series of happy accidents and synchronicities, the opportunity to transition here into Southern California came up last year. And one of the reasons why I did it was because the work that I had been doing had been evolving. Post COVID, I went back out on my own, but not as a primarily as a speaker, which is what I was prior to COVID, was primarily a keynote speaker. I'm an energizer. I won most enthusiastic in second grade. I most valuable cheerleader. I'm a natural born That's just what I do, right?
Yeah.
I love to light up spaces and people in them. And so I was primarily a keynote speaker and an MC and an author and, did some coaching. And then I went into this role in leadership at this network. And then when I got out of that, I really realized as a part of that process of being in really coaching the coaches, coaching the speakers, coaching the trainers, the advisors, the consultants. And one thing always kept showing up. And that was not that they weren't talented, not that they weren't dedicated, not that they weren't, absolutely resourced to be able to be successful. Their number one challenge over and over again was lack of clarity. Period. They could not see themselves. They couldn't see themselves differently than everyone else. They couldn't see themselves full 360 degrees, and they certainly couldn't articulate it so clearly that you could write it on a cocktail napkin. So, as part of my process, I started to then really focus on that individual coaching and consulting work, and people would fly to me to meet, because it's an in-depth, concentrated, multi-day deep dive that we do together so that they can get that clarity and the words they need and the plan they need to be able to really execute what they want to do. Now, here's how the journey from Minnesota to California happens. It's tough to get people to fly to Minnesota when it's 40 degrees below zero in January.
Yeah.
Right. And frankly, I didn't want to get out of my house. So part of the alchemy of what I do is to create an experience for them, not just, yes, we're going to get you your marketing essentials, but really, how do we tap into the bigger you and the more visionary you and the more powerful you? And so I like to create a retreat format.
Yeah.
And what better way than to do that in, wine country Temecula, California? It's pretty snazzy.
Absolutely.
So that's why I sort of got here. That's one aspect of me getting here.
Okay. So who's been an inspiration or hero for you? You do that for others. Who's that been for you?
Oh my gosh, I have so many people that have touched my heart and have inspired me. I mean, from a personal level, obviously, my mother was a huge, huge inspiration. She was a single mom, and I learned so much about sales and leadership and entrepreneurialism from her. She's in my heart every single day, and I can see myself I can literally see my mother as I'm looking in the mirror, going, ah, yes, I remember all those days when she would create the miracle, she said. She'd
Yeah.
every day when she was in Mary Kay, she drove a pink Cadillac for 30 years, and I would watch what it took to run your own business.
Yeah.
And so she was very inspiring to me. And of course, I think I am inspired by people who fundamentally have embraced a growth mindset.
Yeah.
That really inspires me to see, especially now, to see people who are still lit up, who still want to learn more, who still want to admit that they don't know, or maybe that they were wrong. I think that's incredibly inspiring to see people really take the journey of humanity seriously, and take some personal ownership about that.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten is don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally, and I'm still learning it. I really have a deep-seated desire to please, and I admit that I'm working on it. It's a part of as a performer. A lot of times performers, it's like we perform for people.
Yeah.
We perform for the love and the smiles and the claps and the standing ovations and just the warm fuzzies that happen.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning is don't take it personally, the good stuff, and don't take it personally, the not so good stuff. Don't attach yourself too closely to what everybody says, oh, you're amazing, because when they get, when you're a speaker, you get these things called smile sheets. They're the evaluation forms of what did you think of the speaker? And invariably, I would get, I call it the 10-90-10, 10-80-10. 10% of the people would love me so much they'd want me to go home with them. I mean, they were like, "Oh, you were exactly what I need right
Yeah.
now." And then 80% would say, "Yeah, it was really good. I was actually, I really got something out of that. I really liked it. Thank you." And 10% wanted to scratch my eyeballs out. And that's just the way of it. So
Yeah.
when you have that sort of tender heart and sensitivity to it, it's real easy to take those kinds of things, both the 10 that I love you, you're the best thing since, cats, and the 10% that say, I hate Theresa Rose. I mean, I've gotten smile sheets that literally all caps, I hated her. I hated her. And when you have people verbally, vocally in writing with such, anger and antagonism be so personal, it feels so personal.
Yeah.
It's really good advice for me to work on not taking any of that too seriously.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
If I could meet anybody alive on the planet, well, there's so many, but I guess one of the first persons that popped into my head would be Paul McCartney. And I don't know why
Yeah.
I said that, but
That's
I
cool.
really feel like he's the one.
Yeah.
I have such a fond appreciation for music,
Yeah.
which is why you and I, really connected on a heart level. I think before we got started,
Yeah.
is I believe music is a divine expression.
Yeah.
I think that it comes from a bigger place than simply the ideas in our head, and gets put on paper or gets put in the studio. And I believe that the Beatles, of course, I'd love to meet Taylor Swift too. I mean, I want to put her in there too.
Right.
But who I'd want to meet right now, I'd want to meet Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
because I feel like he's a living legend that has held a secret of true divine creation, co-creation that I really, really admire.
It's weird being in Kansas City. I keep hearing about these places that Taylor's going to, and I'm like, I was there, or I'm just waiting to run into an entourage at some point,
Yeah,
because there's
yeah.
all these recommendations, and I mean, like of all places in the world, she's hanging out in Kansas City. It's just still kind of weird to me, you know?
You know what? Love is strange.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the whole ad, the big billboard. It's love will make you do strange things. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? If we can all just kinda keep that in mind, regardless of, what we think of her or her music or her love life or whatever, or his, is that, I hope as I see all of that, that it's all guided by love
yeah,
because the world needs more of it. So
absolutely.
including billionaire, rock stars.
Yeah. You know what I realized the other day when I was watching the game, just looking at her in that box and how excited she's gotten, I think she spent so long getting that adulation for her to be watching others, because Arrowhead's a very unique place to watch a game. It's loud and they're fanatical. So I think for her to psychologically see the tables turn and to be a part of that instead of
Yeah.
being the one where everybody's doing it to her, I think there's something that she's really enjoying about it. And it's kind of cool. So I think she's feeling that reverse psychology of what she went through for so long, and she's just
Yeah.
part of it now, and it
Yeah.
probably doesn't hurt that she's really into Kelsey, but I think that that's probably what I'm sensing is that maybe she never really got into football and the whole thing is just fun to her, you know?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely, and
that
for her to be a fan, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's really great.
Yeah, it is. So, speaking of fervor, speaking of just kind of that natural caffeine, what is it that gets you going every day? What wakes you up? What motivates you? What makes you evolve and grow as a person?
I am committed to a morning practice, and that morning practice is that I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I have water right away so I can hydrate myself. I read, even if it's just 2 pages of something that is inspirational, aspirational, sacred pages. And then I do some meditation. I do about 20 minutes of meditation every morning. I do some yoga and some stretching to keep my body moving better. And then I'm doing Qigong, which is like a movement of energy. It's kind of an ancient practice that really gets body awareness. And for me, moving with my body and in presence and quieting my mind in the morning is a huge part of how my day will go.
So, of all of the people that you've inspired, what is one of your best success stories? One of your best fan letters?
Yeah, one of my best success stories is a woman named Cheryl Lynn, who I love dearly. And several years ago, she and I crossed paths, and I saw she had this great idea, and that was that the world could be changed with a chair of joy. And as I watched her be so passionate and share this, I noticed that people were attracted to her and her idea, but they weren't magnetized to it. And as part of what I do as a brand crystallizer, again, drawing smart pictures for people, I started working with her and I said, Cheryl, you have a $1 billion idea. You have an idea that can change the world. You really do. You just don't have it clear enough. And so she and I worked together, and I co-created with her a crystallized essence of the chair of joy experience, which is that it's 4 little words, just like legs on a chair: sit, breathe, think, feel. When we sit in a chair, when we breathe into our bodies, when we think of something that brought us genuine joy and we feel what it felt like to have that again, our whole outlook can change. And she has taken that crystallized idea that really was not gaining traction, was not getting making any penetration, and people were not responding to what she was talking about. Once she had that crystallized vision of who she was, she created an empire. She has now got this where she is, her mission is to replace the timeout chair with the chair of joy. And there are schools and there are community centers and there are hospitals and there are businesses all over the world that are now using this beautiful, elegant framework that I created for her,
Wow.
with her as a strategic co-creator.
Yeah.
And and I shared about it in my TEDx talk that I just did called Doodle Your Dream: How a Cocktail Napkin Will Save the World. And Cheryl is an absolute inspiration to me. When she had now gotten that crystallized essence of who she just lit it on fire, and she
Wow.
is the walking example of the power of the cocktail napkin.
So of all the things that you've done in your life so far, what are you the proudest of?
My daughter,
Yeah.
absolutely my daughter. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm so very proud of just who she is. I'm proud of how I showed up mostly, right? I mean, there's certainly moments that I wish I could take back, but I feel like I really took that job as most seriously as any other job I've had, and, really, really happy with the legacy that I've left with
Yeah.
her.
So everyone has a perception of you. You have all these circles of people, family, friends,
Yeah.
clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a magnificent, brilliant, hilarious, powerful, engaging, loving, supportive, wise woman who
Wow.
has a place in this world to help other people shine, and it is my purpose and my gift.
So let's end this on a high note here. If you could get into a time machine and go back in history and see one event with your own eyes, where are you going?
Oh, gosh, you ask such great questions, Joe. If I could go back to one event and see it with my own eyes, gosh.
There's so much.
Ah,
It's like the beginning of the Big Bang show. Everything's flying.
yeah, it really is such a wow. I mean, that is a mind-blowing question. I guess what I would like to see, maybe not for the first time, but I would like to see wide open space with no buildings.
Yeah,
You
that'd be
know, I'd
wild.
like to see the earth.
Yeah. I remember that when I was a kid. We moved to a town called Liberty, and it's right outside of Kansas City here. And there was no one there. It was farmland. And now it's this little metropolis. There's just things everywhere. But I remember how pedestrian and blank the canvas was. It's weird to think that. What a great answer. I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's what comes to me is just like, what would we want to really see is just like what this earth is like before we started putting buildings on it.
Yeah. That would be interesting. So, if anyone out there wants to hire you, learn more about you, divulge more, where can they go? Where's the best place?
Yeah, the best place to go is to my website, which is teresarose.com. And if you're wondering how to spell it, it looks like there's a rose.com. And if you want to know about my crystallization work, you just go to teresarose.com/clear, and that will help you out.
So I don't typically do this, but I was looking on the dashboard today. You are my 1000th interview being in this community. So this is a magnanimous person, and it's wonderful. So I just want you to know that.
Well, oh my gosh, now see, this is what I love. I am very grateful that the magic brought us together for that
Yes,
big momentous milestone for you. And I just want to send it off and say that I am the first thousand of many thousands that you will bring out into the world. And I'm grateful and honored to have served in that way. So thank you.
absolutely. Hopefully so. Thank you so much. I love your energy, love your story. Best of luck. Send my love to Southern California.
I will, Joe. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.